Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas construction update video.
Well, welcome to Wednesday. It's the 16th of November 2022, and it's a little bit cold, but otherwise not a bad day to fly out here at the site with a lot of very interesting things to see. First, I want to just start off by saying congratulations to NASA and SLS and the Artemis team for their outstanding launch early this morning. As you can see by here, this photo was just really amazing. And this photo, by the way, is from John Kraus, who is an outstanding space photographer, so you should check his channel out. Also, I want to do a minor correction for what I said in my previous video. As you can see here by this image, I said that this delivery was possibly for soil test samples up near the battery cathode plant, and that's not actually true. What you can see by here is this is actually an extremely large gantry crane, and it has the main parts on one truck and then the 2 feet on the other trucks. And I believe that this has been moved down inside the stamping machine 2 structure on the south end and is going to be instrumental in installing the AIDA stamping press, and you can see some of the parts here in that central section that they've been doing all that construction. I couldn't find it anywhere on the site today, so I'm pretty sure it's been moved inside. So the last thing I'll talk about before we get into the main video is I want to give you a 4-month look back at the changes of the warehouse on wheels yard on the east side, just to give you a sort of appreciation of how much has changed in just 4 months and how much continues to change. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. I hope you enjoy this discussion and the video afterwards. Have a great day.
For today's video, I thought I would give you a 4-month comparison of changes that have occurred in and around the East Warehouse on Wheels yard. This will be from approximately 8 July 2022 to 14 November 2022. On the 8th of July, the warehouse on wheels was just taking shape. The expansion on the north and south ends had not yet occurred. And also on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the new vehicle staging and transportation lot was still being configured as well. 1 month later, the warehouse on wheels is continuing to expand, this time on the north and east sides. Also work on the south end to allow expansion in that direction. On the left-hand side of the screen, the new vehicle staging and transportation lot is still not operational. 1 month later, in September, we see the warehouse on wheels has expanded to the north, the east, and to the south, with further expansion underway on the south end. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see the new vehicle staging and transportation lot is now operational. At the end of October, we can see that the warehouse on wheels has expanded much further to the south, but the north end has been turned into a parking lot for contractors. So that's a big change. Also on the right-hand side of the screen, we can see further expansion to the east for more material storage. And finally, this is how it appears today, with the southward expansion complete, fence around the warehouse on wheels, and material storage continuing to expand on the east side. That's a quick look back, about 4 months of the progress on the east side warehouse on wheels and surrounding areas. I hope you found this informative and useful. I hope you have a great day. Thank you very much for watching, and now into the main video. My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas. This morning we're going to start on the west side of the highway, where I have some interesting developments that I want to show you, particularly for this material staging location. Now originally it was built as what looked like a foundation about 1.5 years ago. Then it was turned into this material storage. And on the north end you can still see some of the trailers and containers that have materials in it. You have some building materials, you have some production materials, you have some tanks, some workshops, some equipment, some vehicles, and a variety of other items that are being used around the site. However, just south of this structure and the tanks on the left-hand side, you note that all of this has now been cleared out. In addition to that, crews are busy applying more of this gravel mix to the foundation area, and this suggests that we may see some resumed construction on this side of the highway in this area. And if that is the case, this is a very interesting development. Now, I've recently seen some permits that talk about doing a parking and logistics lot west of the highway. I do not know if this is it or not, but clearly the crews are preparing for some major change in what has been going on here for the last year and a half. And as you can see by these images, definitely something I'll keep an eye on. So let's get ready to cross over the highway and take a look at the main construction site. So here we are now across the highway. We're near the cyber pond. You can see the concrete lot that is in the process of being removed where the Model Ys used to be. But first, I want to start on the south end, and I want to show you that the trench that you see on the right-hand side of the screen continues towards the west, and it's to allow that conduit to continue to progress towards the west, towards that south bridge. The rest of it is under the right-hand side of the screen, under the dirt that's been filled in, and also where all those solar panels are. And then by the power lines in this tower base, you can see where crews are busy with the remaining parts of the electrical conduit. They have these concrete vaults. You can see the crews working near where I'm zooming in so you can see the conduit underground. You see that red sort of concrete mix that's going on top of the conduit. That's so if there's any digging sometime in the future, they know it's electrical conduit. And you see other crews where there's quite a bit of conduit coming up out of the ground. Again, I think this is going to allow for these lower level power lines to be removed, and then they'll run the power under the ground. So a lot of development on the south end. The west or the east side, you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, a lot more of that steel still is being stored and continues to grow. And also we can see more of the AIDA stamping machine materials, parts, and components have been delivered here. Many are of the ones on the left-hand side in the brown, blue, and green are very large, and all of this will be assembled at some point in the near future inside Stamping Extension 2 on the south end of the building. Here you see more of the components that have been delivered that are for the AID stamping press. And as I mentioned in the intro, with that huge gantry crane, which I believe has been moved into the construction site inside the south end of the building, I think that means that they're getting very close to being able to take those parts inside and begin to assemble that very large stamping press. And as I mentioned before, but I'll say it again here, is the stamping press is so large, it's more than a city block long, and it's as big as an office building, just to give you some context into the size. While we're here on the south end, you can see where all the concrete's been removed. In this last remaining section, you can see the saw cuts that have been completed to make these into small squares like you see on the right-hand side of the screen, and then those are picked up and moved around the site. And I'll show you a little later in the video where some of that concrete is being taken. You can see crews here on the south end at work right at the edge of that concrete. And also you can see how this west side concrete removed section appears today. At the bottom of the screen, this is where they have been installing some of the water pipes. You can see a little bit of that blue pipe remaining, also near these the dump truck. But I'm going to bring ourselves in a little bit lower over this concrete section to show you the work that's going on with this soil sample device. And they drill holes into the ground. They fill it up with a cementitious mixture. They mount this device, as you can see, on some of that shoring, and then it is calibrated and weighted down and measures the strength of the soil so that the crews can determine what additional strengthening mechanisms are needed before construction begins. Here is where Model Ys are being stored on the west side of the building in addition to where we'll see on the east side. So I'm going to bring the drone up over this portion of the west side of General Assembly. I want to show you in context where this landscaping has been done on the left-hand side, and then the main entrance and all of the significant changes that are going on in this section. Now on the ground, on the concrete, you can see more of the section has been saw cut. In fact, you see that gentleman there in the white with the saw getting ready to cut more. You can see how a large section has already been removed and is in the process of being removed right now, and just generally how this appears. Now if you note on the left hand side of the screen, not all of the saw cuts are exactly square with the building, so it suggests that there's going to be some sort of a design around the main entrance. And so this will be an interesting development to follow, and this gives you a good context of where this is located in addition to that landscaping section across that road. I'll bring you up to the roof and we'll talk a little bit about the solar panel installation progress. According to one of my Patreons, Harder NL, who's been tracking the solar panel installation, there's about 27,000 panels installed right now, which is about 40% of the total over 70,000 we expect. They've been doing about 800 panels per day, and at this rate it would take about 54 weeks to complete the entire roof installation. There's about 14 megawatt peak capability installed right now, which is about 70 megawatt hours per day, assuming that we get about 6 hours or so of sun per day and all of the panels are operational and connected, which we do not know. Now, one of the reasons why they may be going slow and eventually will be speeding up the solar panels is because of alterations such as what you see here, and these may continue around the roof itself. Now what you see here is sections of the roof that has been opened up over the body in white. There's some of these HVAC ducts that have been installed, and on the right hand side of the screen you can see some of these grates, and what I think is happening is those grates will be installed over the open section of the roof, and this part will be open down into the equipment that will provide the HVAC for this portion of the factory. I'm going to continue over towards the east, over the power lines, just to give you an idea of some of the progress with the receiving docks and the concrete apron work that they're doing in front of three main areas. Now this is where they have added receiving docks by cutting them into the walls, and right now they're doing some plumbing and additional work ahead of reestablishing the concrete. But here you can see the three areas and some of the work that is going on in this section of the building today. I'm going to move the drone over towards the east, and I want to show you some of the progress on this small parking lot. You can see on the left hand side there's a lot of trenching with electrical conduit that's being installed, and it looks like there's some provisions for superchargers being installed. So what we may see is a supercharger installation here with two main banks with those little trenches that you see on the left hand side. And also on the bottom of the screen, that's where they will do some of the testing of the Model Ys with rumble strips and some bumps for them to drive the vehicle over. But we should see pretty soon this small parking lot used as that staging location that we previously saw on the south end. I'm going to continue further towards the east. I'm going to show you how the warehouse on wheels appears today, and this follows up the discussion that we had in the video intro. But here you can see quite a few of the trailers of being parked here after delivering or getting ready to head out to get more of the equipment and materials needed for production of the Model Ys. You can also see how the east parking lot appears today, where the battery cathode is. And I'm going to give you a good view of farther east where a lot of the materials are being stored in addition to workshops and trailers. Now on the right hand side of the screen you can see quite a bit of those concrete squares. This is yet another section that is being used to store all of the concrete that's being cut up from the south end. Also on the right hand side of the screen you can see another line more of that concrete as well. I'm going to bring the drone down here just to give you a view of this workshop. This is where they modify and fabricate some of the steel that's used in the factory for some more of the construction. And you can see a new material storage yard, probably for steel, right next to it that has been recently prepared. It looks like some steel is being stored there as well. On the left-hand side of the screen, we see a lot of crates, also some wrapped green and red ventilation ducting along where the trailers are, and this is all being used inside the main factory, and possibly some will be used in the battery cathode as well. This is a really good overview of the construction site in and around the battery cathode plant today, and we'll work our way around the building so you can see all of the various progress. Now on this east side, you can see some of the trailers that are used for the contractor offices. The tent, I believe, is used primarily for food service, lunch, dinner, that kind of thing. On the left-hand side, you can see those white containers. Those are York HVAC components that have been recently relocated here from that west side storage that we talked about earlier. Also, you see some of the Evapco HVAC components stored on the side of the building. Those I think are going to go on the west side eventually. And then some other progress in this particular area with this steel structure, and also more of the material storage, some of the trailers, workshops, and some of the equipment just to the north in this overall clearing area. Now on the top of the screen in that big field, you can see you can make out some of the vehicles that are doing soil samples, core samples of that area, which highly suggests that we're going to see some sort of construction up in that field at some near point, maybe in the next month or two. Definitely something I'm keeping an eye on. Now over here, this is the equipment rental lot. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see a lot of more of those concrete squares from the south end. Here is a sort of a Quonset hut tent that is used for maintenance and repair. Also, their offices nearby in those trailers. And then overall, just a good idea of the amount of equipment that's being stored up here that is periodically used at the construction site and then brought back up here. Again, there's more of that concrete that you can see that's brought up from the south end from all of that demolition work that we saw earlier in the video. I'm going to proceed over this clearing. On the right-hand side, you can see all that very bright green. That's where they seeded over an area where they reclaimed some ponds and removed some of the hills. And you can see more of that earthwork on the left-hand side of the screen continuing right now. The steel materials that you see just coming underneath the drone is for the new construction of the building on the west side of cathode, and we'll see a lot of activity there in just a second. But here's some more wall panels right at the north end, right next to those 5 loading or receiving docks, waiting for installation at some point. As I wrap around towards the west, you can see that the majority of the wall panels have been installed on the left lower side in those white wrapped equipment. A lot of this has also been relocated from that west material staging location that we talked about at the beginning of the video. You can also see a lot of activity with cranes and drills, and GeoPier is back at work. And I'll give you a closer look at that in a second, but I want to first start over here. Even with a little bit of the sunlight, this angle gives you an idea of how this steel structure is coming along, and those open areas on the roof, I believe, is where those Evapco components that we talked about on the other side of the building will eventually be located. But it's something I'm monitoring to find out if, in fact, that is the case. Now, if you can see this entire section where the GeoPier is working, the cranes, and also that large yellow crane is busy drilling some more bores into this section of the construction site. This is the same crane, the same drill, and the same process that they're using here that they use on the south end for that soil testing rig. So what I expect is that they will drill several of these holes. They'll install some rebar cages, some concrete, and then they'll bring that testing rig over here, and they're going to test the strength of the soil to make sure that it meets requirements, and if they have to add more of the GeoPier or any other soil strengthening processes. But this is a good view of how that drill is set up, where it's drilling the holes, and how they are preparing to do some soil testing here while the geopier continues to work installing those piers that are about 15 to 20 meters or about 40 to 60 feet into the ground, and use this gravel mix that you see at the bottom of the screen, compact it in and make those piers. Now you see a lot of these pipe manifolds on the ground and also several on the concrete. I believe this is the piping that we'll see suspended on the underside of this galvanized steel structure. And we talked about this in depth in my previous video, and I would suggest you take a look at that for more information about what I and many of my Patreon thinks are being constructed in this section with that structure. But I'll pull back and give you a good higher level view of this west side construction project and how it is continuing to transform. And as I pull back a little bit more, just its location in relation to the battery cathode plant. This morning we see some activity with the crews and some of the trenching going on around this pond that has been developed. And I believe with that trenching around the perimeter and the workers there, they're preparing to add a liner, and then this will be used for contaminated water. And we talked about this in a previous video as well within the last week, so you might want to check that out for more information. But I believe this will be a temporary pond to control contaminated water for a period of time until the final product and process that they will install is completed. Now here's some more components painted red and white that I believe are stored temporarily here, but will eventually find their way into the main building, most likely in the north part of the paint shop. We continue more towards the north, and we'll take a look at the electrical switch yard and the activity up here today. As you can see, quite a bit of activity at the electrical switch yard. I'll fly the drone from the south to the north along the east side just to give you a pretty good view of how this is continuing to transform with all of the assembly of the steel components and assembly of some of the electrical components such as circuit breakers, disconnects, and bus bars. And also the steel pipes on the north end. This will be what is installed to make poles for the electrical wires that will connect the power lines to the electrical switch yard. But this is a really good view from the north looking south back at the main factory of how this section appears today. I'll bring the drone in a little bit closer to give you some detailed views of the assembly process of the electrical switch yard. Now you can see there's 4 of those A-frame towers. Those are 4 of what eventually will be 7. There's the V-topped circuit breakers that have been installed. At this point here you can see those 6 rectangular forms of concrete on the ground. That's where 2 more of those circuit breakers will go. On the left-hand side on the steel, you can see how they're now assembling more steel onto these footings that were just recently completed. And that drill on the left-hand side is what has been used to drill the holes and put the rebar cages in concrete to support each one of these footings. And of course, the transformer slabs that will eventually have those transformers installed are having work today to finish up those retaining walls around the perimeter and the central slab ready for concrete. So let's fly back towards the main building and take a look at what's going on the north end today. As we approach the northwest corner of the casting machine structure, I'm going to give you a view of the number of castings that are stored on the ground and the racks on the left-hand side of the screen. And these are being produced at what I believe is over 400 per day to keep up with the production rate, which I believe is about that same amount. Here's another Model Y body. It looks like it's got some paint on it, possibly some undercoating. It's kind of hard to tell, but it looks like it's a 2170 variant because it has floor. And this may be part of a testing process for the new paint line that has been being assembled over the last several months inside the paint shop. And again, that's an added capability to what they already had. As I pan the drone back towards the west, I wanted to show you here on the ground, it looks like these are trunk lids for Model Ys being displayed outside for some apparent reason. Again, this may be part of a painting test process, but it's hard to say why these parts are being stored out here on the northeast side of the casting machine structure. But this is another good view of just the amount of materials, some of the ducting, some of the green wrapped components for the paint shop, the modular paint shop that they're installing, and just generally how the activity on this north end appears today. And I'm going to bring the drone up just so you can see some of the work with the cranes, and it looks like the workers are getting ready to have another one of those trash bins pulled back down from the roof. This also gives you a good view of the sidewalk, the curbs and plumbing that's going on in this central section between the parking lot and the road. So anyway, that's it for today. Busy day, lots of interesting things to see. As always, I appreciate your support and viewing, and I hope you have a great day.